All right, if you guys are not aware, Lords of the Fallen just made a very interesting announcement. They announced on social media that they have officially hit 5.5 million players. Now, you're probably thinking to yourself, wow, 5.5 million copies sold is amazing. But unfortunately, that's not what's happening here. They have hit 5.5 million players engaged. Yes, they are using that metric, the metric that Assassin's Creed Shadows swore made them super successful. They are using the same exact metric because Lords of the Fallen is a Game Pass game. It almost makes you wonder if all these games that are Game Pass games suddenly have the requirement that they have to announce that they hit XYZ players engaged. But that can't be true because obviously Clear Obscure Expedition 33 did not advertise their game with players engaged. They advertised it with copies sold, and they're also a Game Pass game. But it just makes you wonder sometimes. So, Lords of the Fallen announces 5.5 million players engaged. But what they also announced is that the game is still not profitable. They have not made their money back. After 5.5 million players engaged, they have not made their money back. I want you guys to harp on that particular statement because what we're about to get into in this video, I need you to remember it. So it says that after only reaching 5.5 million players, Lords of the Fallen is now only approaching the break-even point, according to the studio's CEO. Despite being seen as one of the more successful AA games in recent years, Lords of the Fallen appears to have struggled to turn a profit for the developer. I want you guys to remember something. Lords of the Fallen is a AA game. That means that their budget is much lower than a AAA game. Assassin's Creed Shadows is a AAA game, which means their budget is vastly higher, for the most part, than a AA game. Coupled with the fact that it's Ubisoft, and you already know their budget is through the roof. Now, I want you guys to remember, Assassin's Creed Shadows, the highest number we saw them announce was 3 million players engaged, right? 3 million players engaged for Assassin's Creed Shadows that was selling $10 higher than retail than Lords of the Fallen. Now you have Lords of the Fallen with 5.5 million players engaged, $10 less retail than Assassin's Creed Shadows, and they themselves are saying they're not profitable with a budget that is probably half of Assassin's Creed Shadows, and that is being generous. Chances are it's probably 1/3 of Assassin's Creed Shadows' budget. Keep this all in mind as we continue to go through all of this, because anytime they do this players engaged metric, I keep telling people that it's absolutely bullshit. How is it that you have all of these shills out there trying to claim that Assassin's Creed Shadows is the best-selling game ever, the most successful game ever, it's made all this money, etc., 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 at 3 million players engaged, but then this game, Lords of the Fallen, at 5.5 million players engaged, somehow, some way, is not even close to breaking even on a budget that is 1/2 to maybe even 1/3 of Assassin's Creed Shadows. Just make it all make sense to me, because I keep telling people I just want to see the actual real numbers. But until that day ever comes, I'm going to call Shadows a flop from the get-go. But anyway, let's continue. So, despite being seen as the most successful, or one of the more successful AA games in recent years, released in 2023, Lords of the Fallen was deemed an instant success, selling nearly 1 million copies within just 10 days. The game was also well received by critics, holding a Metacritic score of around 75 at the time of writing, placing it in the generally favorable category. What's surprising is that despite these accomplishments, and considering Lords of the Fallen isn't a major AAA title, the cost-to-profit ratio for the developer isn't quite what one might expect. CI Games recently celebrated reaching that 5.5 million all-time players, to which CEO Marek responded, and the break-even is very close too. Tominski's tweet suggests that even after years of ongoing support and updates, Lords of the Fallen may still not be profitable. One key detail to keep in mind, as the CEO pointed out, is that the recent milestone includes Lords of the Fallen's Game Pass performance as well. In other words, not all 5.5 million players paid the full price for the game, which could help explain why he has struggled to generate profit. So why is it that when it comes to this particular game having Game Pass, why is it that Game Pass is an excuse as to why it couldn't make its money back, but Assassin's Creed Shadows and Ubisoft Plus is not an excuse? Why? Because it's the same company, because they get all the money. Game Pass pays these developers money up front, so it's almost equivalent. So I don't understand exactly where we're going here. How is it that a game with almost 2 million, if not slightly over 2 million less players engaged, than Lords of the Fallen. How is that game successful with 3 times the budget, and Lords of the Fallen with 1/3 of the budget is not successful with 2 million more players? How? Nobody's ever going to want to say that, right? Nobody's ever going to want to answer that question. So let's continue. Now, if you look at his tweet here, he says the break even is very close after announcing 5.5 million players engaged. A 2023 report claimed that the studio behind Lords of the Fallen expected total production costs, including marketing and physical release expenses, to reach around 200 million PLN, or roughly 77 million USD at current exchange rates. So the budget's around $77 million. I think it's easily safe to say that Assassin's Creed Shadows is 3 times higher than that. I'm not even going with half, right? $77 million is about the high side of a AA game. I guarantee you Assassin's Creed Shadows is well over $150 million. I would put money on that bet. I would put money that Assassin's Creed Shadows is over $200 million for budget. So how is it that Shadows, everybody is trying to say, is massively successful? The most successful game ever, up until recently, apparently, where now it's number 3 in the United States, but they're trying to say it was a number 2 top-selling game, only behind Monster Hunter Wilds. So how is this even possible? Because they were putting their players engaged, they were putting their copies sold, they were putting everything into that 3 million number. So how is this possible? For a game that sells $10 less than Shadows, Shadows had a $10 higher retail price. How is any of this possible? People are going to say, well, what about deluxe editions? Okay, what about it? What about it? Is that going to make up the drastic number difference we're talking about in budget? Come on. What are we doing? But if that figure reflects the actual cost, and considering Taminsky's remark about the game still not being profitable, it's likely that Lords of the Fallen has to surpass the 2 million unit sold mark. Otherwise, at its base $60 price tag, it would have already started generating revenue. Well, that's because most of the sales don't happen at the base retail price tag, right? Most of the sales happen at the sale price tag of like $20, $25. And the same thing happens with Ubisoft games. Ubisoft games, they don't really come out the park swinging that hard. And then eventually, after many, many, many sales, they will cross over the multi-million units sold mark, but they'll do it at like a $10 price tag, $15 price tag, $19.99 price tag. That's when they'll do it. Otherwise, they're not going to do it at full price most of the time. So I decided to look at Lords of the Fallen again just to see what numbers they ended up pulling. And if you look at the numbers, they did around almost 2 years ago, they did around 43,075 all-time concurrent high numbers. They had a really nice bump when they introduced their patch, where they got everybody hyped to replay the game for version 2.0 or whatever it was. And then it kind of faltered as, people beat the game and whatnot. But if you look here, they're estimated to have anywhere between 890,000 to about 1.4 million units sold. So the article is right. They're nowhere near the 2 million units sold mark, but that's okay. If you look at Assassin's Creed Shadows, for example, not much better. You had 64,825 all-time peak 4 months ago, with 3,336 people playing the game right now. And obviously, it kind of just tapered off pretty damn hard and never recovered from there. So estimated sales are only 600,000 to 770,000 on Steam right now. And as much as they want to complain and say Steam numbers don't matter, right? Steam numbers don't matter. They never matter unless they matter in their favor. You can say Steam numbers don't matter, but the simple fact is Steam is the only numbers we have because you're trying to hide everything else. You don't want to be honest and tell people the truth about any other numbers out there. So I'm going to use the numbers that I actually have to formulate an opinion with, and you can continue to convince everybody, or try to, that Assassin's Creed Shadows was such a massive success with numbers that don't exist. You can keep doing that, and I'll keep talking about numbers that do exist. So until you can provide me with real numbers that exist elsewhere, and Circana, by the way, hasn't released numbers. They say that it's a top seller, but have released 0 numbers. Gee, I wonder why. In any case, Lords of the Fallen not being profitable, I feel like should not be generally shocking to people, but they are getting very close. And that's after almost 2 years. Keep in mind, almost 2 years of work on this particular game. So another factor to consider is the game's post-launch cost. Lords of the Fallen received regular updates, suggesting that CI Games reinvested part of its earnings back into development, which is also possible, by the way. The CEO recently noted that sales have been picking up since the release of the version 2.0 update, which is true. As we could see in these numbers here, there has been a bit of a bump here compared to what it was before. It's almost double the numbers. Granted, it's still not amazing, but it's double the concurrent numbers that it used to be. But despite concerns about Lords of the Fallen's profitability, CI Games appears to be confident in the franchise's future. I am not confident, and I'm going to explain why I am not confident in Lords of the Fallen. I've said this many places. I've said this in videos. I've said this on Twitter. To my knowledge, Lords of the Fallen sequel that is coming up, that they're working on right now, that particular game is going to be Epic Games exclusive on PC, to my knowledge, okay? That is going to hurt the game drastically on PC in terms of PC performance, okay? The reason why they're doing that is because Epic Games has invested in the sequel. How much? I have no idea. But to my knowledge, it is going to be Epic Games exclusive on the PC platform. Obviously, they're still going to release the game on consoles and whatever. But in terms of PC, it's not coming to Steam. He has made multiple tweets trying to refute this and say that Epic Games has invested in their company and allowed them to continue to make the next sequel greater and all this blah, 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 whatever. But they are making this game Epic exclusive, which is going to be a huge fucking problem. Because for me, that means I'm not going to buy it. Okay. There's going to be people that might buy it, and great for them. I'm just not going to be one of those people. Flat out. The moment I see Epic Games exclusive, I put you in the trash bin immediately. You go in the trash bin, and I'm not looking at you anymore. That's just what it is. That's just what it is. But anyway, the studio is already working on a sequel scheduled for release in 2026. It remains to be seen whether the sequel to Lords of the Fallen will turn the franchise profitable, or if the initial installment will reach the break-even point before the second game even arrives. Well, I will say that if it releases on Epic Games exclusively, it is going to drag its feet to profitability, just like Alan Wake 2 did. Alan Wake 2 had to drag its fucking feet to profitability, and that game had a much lower budget than this game did. So I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know how much they're spending on the next game. Considering Epic Games is financially involved in the next game now, I wonder what differences there are going to be in those games. Obviously, Marek is on this weird, he's on this fucking just weird thing on Twitter where he's trying to convince everyone he's based, right? He's trying to convince everyone that he's totally for the gamer and whatnot. And of course, the changes that he's made have been great. They've been great changes for the game. I haven't hated any of them. But it does feel a little bit fake to me. I can't shake the feeling that this is all just for show in order to try to maximize the amount of sales they may come for the sequel. That's how I've always felt about the situation. But of course, I'm happy to be proven wrong. So we'll see what happens with this particular game. But at this point, I did find all this information interesting. I do find it interesting that a game with almost 6 million players engaged is not profitable, but yet somehow, some way, a game with 3 million players engaged and triple the budget apparently is profitable. I don't understand how the math's there. But again, people will try to convince you whatever, depending on if their ideology is at threat or not. So we'll see what ends up happening with Lords of the Fallen in the future. But you guys can let me know in the comments down below. What do you think about this? Do you think everything I said is legit, or do you disagree with some things? Whatever it may be, leave a like, leave a comment. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.